Thank you so much for staying with SABC News. My name is Diabo Seto. This is Your Money on Market Sense, and a little later on, I'll be bringing you SME on Point. The financial services sector is battling to cope with an increase in internet fraud. More people have been transacting online due to COVID-19. According to the credit bureau, TransUnion's latest quarterly analysis of global online fraud trends, fraudsters are targeting consumers more than they are businesses. SABRIC expert cybercrime is expected to increase ahead of Black Friday and the festive season, and they've also warned consumers to be more vigilant when transacting online.
The festive season is on the horizon and many will go on a spending spree. More people are shopping online as some retailers are already offering Black Friday specials since the beginning of November. The South African Banking Risk Information Center is a non-profit organization. Is giving some tips on how to protect yourself from cyber fraud during this period.
You would get a call from somebody purporting to be working in the bank's fraud department, and this person would say to you, listen, I've identified a transaction on your account that looks like a fraud. Can you confirm your name is Nishal? And so he takes you through a process in which he solicits information from you that your bank would never request you for. And often he would request of you to give them details of your credit card, your CVC number that's on the back, all kinds of stuff that would assist them in putting together a financial profile of yourself. So really be careful of that modus operandi. It's quite prevalent at the moment, people getting these calls. The second one that that's doing its rounds, it's called business email compromise. And this is where your invoices are being altered behind the scenes, inserting in new bank account information. And typically this time of the year, we all got to pay for something, and we end up paying in the wrong account.
According to TransUnion's latest report, about 42% of consumers say they've been a target of digital fraud related to COVID-19 schemes. Fraudulent digital transactions for businesses have decreased by 9% worldwide.
You could take some steps to make sure you've got a really strong password. And then make sure you're managing your social media settings. Take care of what is it that you allow people to view on your social media profiles. I think the other thing is that a lot of us are working from home, like myself, and we need to just put in a little bit of money so that we could make sure that our networks at home are safe and secure. We shouldn't just have open networks. We should put in some passwords, making sure that the Wi-Fi has necessary codes and stuff like that.
SABRIC says it has seen an increase in the number of senior citizens being victims of fraud. Many of them have lost their hard-earned cash and in some instances their pension fund money by disclosing their personal information.
And senior citizens get targeted for a slightly different type of a scam. Often they would end up receiving an SMS. So whilst maybe they're not having access to an email system or online platform, but certainly, on their devices, they get an SMS. And more often than not, they're receiving SMSs that say, we've just identified a fraudulent transaction on your account. Please call the following number. And then our senior citizens are responding to these things. Now, your bank would typically not behave or engage with you in a manner like that. But certainly we are seeing senior citizens being the target of SMS types of scams.
ABSA says it has experienced a 200% increase in e-commerce transaction volumes from January to August ahead of Black Friday. This as South Africans seek a safer and more convenient way of transacting during the lockdown.
We always say never disclose your logon credentials, never share your card details, never approve transactions if you're not transacting. And if you do see suspicious activity like that, always approach your bank first. They contact their fraud hotline and report the suspicious activity that's potentially taking place in your profile.
If you are going to transact online or on your mobile app, be vigilant and exercise caution to avoid losing your hard-earned cash. Also avoid sharing your personal information with strangers or click on an email link Be mindful of the type of information that you share on social media platforms, as this can make you vulnerable to fraudsters. Naledi Matlapeng, SABC News, Johannesburg.
All right, I'm sure that we need to take that story by Naledi Matlapeng a little bit further before we go to SME on Point, just to talk about the uptake in fraudulent online transactions. And we are joined further via Skype by TransUnion Product Director Keith Wardell. He is with TransUnion. Keith, thank you so much for joining us. Is Keith on the line?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Keith. Thank you so much for joining us on Your Money on Market Sense. Keith, let's talk about why we're seeing an increase in targeting fraud that is more targeting consumers rather than companies, as we've seen previously. What has changed?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely related to digital channels being used more and more frequently by consumers. And I think you've heard the other people talk around how in digital channels, it's anonymous, so it's much easier to target a consumer. And as we mentioned, we saw in our consumer financial hardship survey, as we reached October and into the pandemic, 42% of South Africans said they'd been targeted. Really? So it is now, because more and more consumers are transacting online, that's why they're being targeted.
Yeah. Would you say that you're seeing companies doing a lot more to curb these internet fraudsters, or is it a problem that's much bigger than they are?
No, we've seen that during COVID-19 pandemic, we actually surveyed South African executives, and actually 62% of them have actually changed their digital transaction processes due to the pandemic to help consumers. Because businesses know that smooth digital transactions are essential for their survival, and they've got to protect consumers.
Yeah. Would you say that because COVID, the pandemic itself, is forcing us into these digital channels, now you have a bracket of citizens or consumers that are not very well versed with how to transact online, therefore are doing more mistakes? Do you think that could be the reason?
Yeah, I definitely think that as more and more people have had to move to digital environments, they are having to become more and more familiar with that. And that's why you see more and more people are telling consumers what they must not do and what they should do when they're transacting digitally, what information they should and shouldn't share.
Yeah. Tell me more about this onboarding solution that you've recently launched at TransUnion. What is it and how is it going to assist consumers?
Yeah, so what it does is it helps businesses to offer consumers greater access to digital products and services, but it also helps address fraud. So one of the things that we do with this onboarding solution is we actually do biometric authentication of a consumer, so facial recognition. So we actually know that the person who's in the digital channel is actually the person that owns the account or is the person that wants to open the account. Yeah. And it's all about delivering a friction-right experience where you can protect the consumers, but you also can help them to move through easily.
Let's talk about authentication methods or verification methods. I know that it's something that I personally find quite cumbersome and really time wasting, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers will agree with me, yet they're necessary. Do you think that if the companies get rid of this, it would increase the fraud, or are there other innovative ways in which companies can look to authenticate transactions?
Yeah, I think certainly from our survey that we've spoken to South African executives, they believe that in the next 5 years, biometric authentication will become the dominant means of authenticating a consumer. And that is actually a very simple process because it just involves you using a camera to take a selfie, your mobile phone, you can take a selfie, and that then helps to authenticate you. It's much less cumbersome than some of the old methods that have been used for authenticating consumers.
In this last 1.5 minutes that I still have you on the line, Keith, won't you just talk to our consumers about how they can protect themselves online during this time? We're seeing, obviously, that a lot of businesses are taking their products online. You have to put a lot more of your credit card numbers and so forth. What are the most important ways that one can protect themselves?
Yeah, so one of the ways that we certainly at TransUnion help consumers to protect themselves is we actually have a solution called True Identity. And one of the things that does is it allows consumers to register some of their digital information and their financial information. And then what we do is we monitor the dark web, so that if that information appears on the dark web, we can alert that consumer, and they actually then know that that information is compromised, and they can contact that organization and stop that information being used for fraud. So that's one of the really important ways. The other thing is certainly be wary of what you post on social media. Be wary of when people are calling you, asking you for information.
Right.
Always check with the organization first, because a lot of the time, as we heard from ABSA, they wouldn't ask for certain information.
All right, Keith Wardell, thank you so much for joining us on Your Money on Market Sense. I hope that our viewers have taken note of all the tips that you've given us. But thank you so much. Do enjoy your weekend.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. That was Keith Wardell, and he is with TransUnion. He was giving us views about, how to protect yourself in terms of internet and online transacting. I know that a lot of us are now buying everything online. We're seeing that we have a lot of pop-up shops, especially through social media. You should really take note of that.